Hello. A few days ago we had SAP Inside Track Sheffield, and one of the sessions I gave there was learn to drive Fiori apps from underneath, fixing up a nicer HCP Destinations table. Now this session was all about showing you how you can use the Chrome developer tools, the UI5 toolkit power itself, plus the awesome UI5 support tool, also known as the diagnostics tool, to inspect, to look at, to manipulate, to change on the fly from underneath a running UI5 Fiori app, and become more comfortable and familiar with how things work underneath. To choose something to use to demonstrate these features and this approach, I decided to scratch a little bit of an itch of my own, which was the destinations table in the SAP HANA Cloud Platform cockpit. Now, the destinations are a really important and really powerful feature of HCP. I'm sure you can read about those somewhere else. But I just found that the actual UI-based management of these destinations left a little bit to be desired, especially when you had more than a few. I've only got like 4 here, destinations. So I'm working on a project where we have at least 15 different destination definitions, and scrolling up and down there, you can't really tell whether the scrolling is going up or down, and then you have to sort of scroll down here to see the actual destination configuration. So this is a little bit made up, but it's also, a semi-real itch that I wanted to scratch. I wanted to make this destinations table a little bit nicer and a little bit smaller. You can see that each of the rows here at the moment is taking up a lot of screen real estate. So to start, I had a little section called Setup, and in that setup, one of the things I did was obviously open the Chrome developer tools, which I've just done there. But what I also did was turn on debugging, because, in fact I'll do that there right now via a URL parameter, because at some stage shortly we'll want to have a look at some of the source code, some of the view definitions for the thing that we're manipulating, and in order to do that we need the source code, because the views that we're talking about here are written in JavaScript. Anyway, let's just switch to the network tab, and we can see here that we have a ton of stuff being loaded. Of course, we're saying please load all the different resources of the UI5 runtime itself, plus the HANA Cloud Platform framework that wraps this particular destinations piece here. So there's an awful lot of requests being made, which of course don't get made in normal circumstances. So by the time this finishes, we'll have what we had before, which is the there we go, there's an assert, we'll just pass through that, the destinations table in front of us. There we go, there's another assert. There's only 3 here, so I'm not going to bother turning the asserts off or turning the pauses off. Let's just get the things loaded, and there's the final assert coming up. There we go. There we go. So now we've got the debug sources loaded. We're almost ready to go. What we'll also do now, though, is to turn on the Chrome, or fire up the SAP UI5 diagnostics, otherwise known as the support tool. And with this, we can use the control tree panel to have a look at the structure of our app here. Notice when you turn on the diagnostics, one thing it does do is, you can see it clicking around here, it sort of increases the verbosity of the UI5 runtime. So I'm going to turn that back down again with jQuery.sap.log.set_level, and the levels are enumerated, jQuery.sap.log.log_level. I only want to see logs of severity error or above. There we go, that's a little bit better. Okay, we can have a look to see if we can find the, let's move that down a little bit, yeah, find the table here. We know it, we sort of I guess it's a table, but let's just do a search for table. There we go. There's the table, dests tenant master table. And that's an explicit ID that's been given to this table. We can see whether it is that table or not by clicking on it. We can see that it's highlighted there. For us, it's of the base type SAP UI table, so it's from the SAP UI table library rather than the SAP.m library. But anyway, and what it would be nice to do would be sort of to find the context of where this table is defined and move it so that it covers all of this screen here, just for testing and debugging purposes, because I'm restricted with real estate here. I'd like most of the real estate to be given over to the console, to the debugging tool. So let's get rid of this menu here. Let's see how we could do that, for example. Now if we scroll up, you can see the table is contained within a view, a JavaScript view, which is there. And if we sort of scroll up a little bit, we can start to see various layouts. There's the vertical layout, which we can't actually see on the screen here, but if we go one above, there's a fix flex layout from the SAP UI layout library. If we go a little bit further, we can see a ton of repeated controls links. What could they be, for example? Oh yes, possibly these things here. Yeah, there we go. So if we go a bit further up, we can see this row repeater, which is that thing there. So really, we're not interested in that, in this horizontal layout or that JavaScript view. So what we'll do is we'll just collapse that for a second. There's the not the horizontal layout. There's a JS view containing our navigation manager view, and there's the fix flex that contains this stuff here. The fix flex contains two things. It contains the destination table itself and also the details of the selected destination. So let's go back here, and we can see that this ID of the thing we want to keep is __flex 0, and where we want to put it really is there. So let's do that right now. We've got flex 0 and area 1. We can say sap.ui.get core.by ID area 1. Okay, yeah, it looks like we've got something. Area 1 equals, let's do that. Let's clear the screen, make that a little bit bigger. There we go. Area 1.get metadata. What is that? That's, yeah, a border layout area, which is what we thought. What we can do is area 1.get content. What's in it? Only one thing, but we want to get rid of that. So we'll say remove all content. Gone. Okay, we've still got that fix flex control still exists, so we can say area1.add content, sap.ui.get core by ID flex 0. We're grabbing that whole thing and inserting it as the only content item in area 1's content aggregation, and we get a little assertion there. There we go. So we actually moved temporarily that list of different tabs or different sections of the HANA Cloud Platform cockpit out of the way, so we can see this a little bit better. Okay, fine. Let's just get rid of that for now. Right, so where's that table? Let's have a look there. The table is sort of down here somewhere, but instead what we'll do is we'll point to it with the inspect tool of the Chrome Developer Tools, and it's quite hard sometimes to point to exactly the table, but all we'll do is we'll just click on something in the table and then work upwards. So if I move this across even more, you'll understand now why I've moved out or gained as much real estate as I can for this. I'll click on that, and here, if I go up with my mouse arrow, I can go all the way up here. Oh, I've gone a bit too far, that's okay. I'll go down again. You can see that's the JS view, the JavaScript view that holds the table there. And if I go down one more, we can see that that's the whole table. That whole blue thing is, that's all sort of highlighted. And lo and behold, yes, the ID of this element or this div is dests tenant master table, which is our table. So we can actually grab a hold of that in the console by saying table equals sap.ui.get core. Now, by ID, rather than grab that table ID manually, what we can know is that in the Chrome Developer Tools, $0 refers to the currently selected item in the Elements panel, which is this one here. So we can go back to the console. By the way, I'm switching between these different tabs here with my command or control in Windows 1 to 9 shortcuts. So there we go, command 1 goes to the elements tab and command 8 goes back to the console. And I can go from $0.id to get the ID. So I can say table equals sap.ui.get core.id $0.id. Now that's very long-winded to say that all the time, so instead what I'm going to do is say _g, just so I don't clobber anything else in the Windows namespace, equals sap.ui.get core.byId. No brackets at the end because I'm referring to the function, and now I can say t equals _g $0.id. There we go. So we now have the table. Let's just double check we have the table. t.get metadata. Yeah, it's the table. Great. So now what we want to do is just confirm really for ourselves that we have grabbed the right thing. And obviously we have, but let's double check. We can see first of all that the class name is SAP UI table, which is what we saw before. Oh, there it is, table. Sorry, back there, table. And we can see SAP UI table. And if you were to look at the API reference for the table control in SAP UI table, you'll see that it has a rows aggregation. And we can have a look at the binding for that rows aggregation in the binding info section. We've got the visible row count, which we're not that interested in, but we can see here that we have the rows, which is an aggregation, and it's bound to the path /destinations in a model called, well, no name. So it's in the default nameless model, which is often called the domain model. Notice also, interestingly enough, that it's a JSON model. Anyway, that's by the by. What we'll do is we'll grab a hold of that data and have a quick look at it. So if we go back down here, and let's see, if we say t.get model, now we don't specify a name because there's no name for this model. We can see the model there. What type of model is it? It's a JSON model. Yeah, okay, but in this case we'll actually grab the data. In fact, what we'll say is, yeah, we'll do that, and we have all sorts of data in this model. And remember that the rows aggregation was bound to /destinations, and there's the destinations. We can see there's 4, as we've got 4 destinations here. First one is NGS, and we've also got public OData services and so on. Okay, so yeah, that looks like the right information here. Why don't we actually grab the destinations data? Destinations equals t.get model.get data destinations. Great, we've got 4 things in the array there. Right, let's have a quick look. We'll have a bit of fun. We'll just actually map out, just so we can sort of visually inspect with our own eyes that we've got the right data and we can sort of start to get a better feel for it. We'll map over the destinations and we'll call a function that takes the destination and returns one of the 2 things that we saw for each of the destinations. Ooh. Sorry, there we go. Let's move that over here for a second. We can start to see these different destinations. NGS, public, OData service, test1, test2, whatever it was. All these different types of things here. If we have a quick look again at the destinations, well, let's just have a look at the first one. You can see that each destination has a master, which sort of represents the stuff that's in here in the rows of the table, and then it also has slave, which are all these different parameters here in the destination configuration itself. What some destinations have, if you define them so, are extra properties, additional properties here. For example, this one here is a back-end SAP system. It's a front-end server, a gateway server, and Fiori Launchpad server, UI2. And we've got additional properties, SAP client, web ID enabled, and so on. And we can see these additional properties are contained in a child of slave called pairs of names and values. We'll come to that later, but we can have a quick look at those pairs. in a similar sort of way. We can say destinations.forEach, call the function again. In fact, we'll just need table, d.slave.pairs. Sort of map out tables of pairs. There we go. So in fact, only one of these 4 destinations, this one we're looking at right now, has these additional properties. The other ones don't. So they are web IDs, usage, system, enabled, and client. There we go. So we can start to get a feel for what the shape and colour and texture of the data is. Anyway, we now, if we want to embed a different type of table in here, a different sort of structure, what we don't want to miss out on is the functionality that already exists. So when we click this thing here, we can scroll down, we can see the destination configuration for the table item we picked is down there. And so on, test dest 2, and so on. So we want that functionality to still work when we replace this table with our own table. So really, we need to find out a little bit more about how this link, this clicking works. So if you remember, this table here is contained within a view, and that's the view with the ID __ JS view 2. So the JS view 2, the ID, we know it's a sort of internally generated ID, and we can sort of guess already from that it's a JavaScript view. So we can say, or we can confirm that with T, which is our table, get parent. And the parent is that JS view 2 view. And if we expand that, we can see the actual view name, which is really going to point to the source, is something called destinations view. So why don't we trace through this view and have a look to see if we can find where these individual things, which look like links to me, where these things are defined, so we can actually see if there's a handler for the press event. So I'm going to open up with Control P or Command P, destinations view. There we go. There's the destinations view, and it's the view we're interested in. So there we go. And as eggs are eggs, it's not as straightforward as one might imagine. So we can see that this is actually bringing in a library of stuff. Abstraction, turtles upon turtles all the way down. So we can actually look for, or we need to look for, something called destinations view, not the view, but a library or a module. So let's just do that now. Destinations view is that one there. We'll have a look at that. Oh, okay, we've got a further level to go down, destinations editor. So we'll look at destinations editor. And we've got a further level, so this actually uses something called get master table in yet another module called destination editor components. I'm digging down and down and down because I'm not seeing yet something that looks like a proper view definition in JavaScript. I'm hoping that this next one will be the one we want. So we want to look at destination editor components. So I've got that one. This looks more like it. And this is that get main toolbar that we referenced. So I'm going to take a punt and have a look for, in the search, link. Oh, there we go, only one of 2. Oh, well, there's the other one as well. That's not relevant because that's part of an ID or a class string. So here we go. So the template is within, oh yeah, there we go. Template is within this table definition, or this instantiation. And remember that the table control in SAP UI table, unlike the table control in SAP M, the template that you specify when you define a table is actually at the column level rather than the sort of items or row aggregation level. So this is exactly what we want here. So we can see here the template for this sort of first, second. Let's scroll a bit more. This mouse is very clicky. Here's the first column, and there's the second column down here, which is this column here. Type was the first one, name is the second one. And you can see it is in fact a link, and that link has a text, and it's also got a press handler. or press event, sorry, and a handler defined as an anonymous function directly for it. Controller.open.call, and passing the controller as the context and the event. So what we'll do is we'll just grab the definition of this anonymous function, and because of the power, as it were, of JavaScript, we can grab hold of the controller and get a reference to it, and then use that as almost like as a closure in this function definition here, and then use this function definition as the handler for the press event or equivalent on our template that we're going to use for our new table. So let's go to the console and clear the screen, and we'll say controller.t equals t.getParent, which is the table's parent, which is the JavaScript view, and from the view we can get the controller. There we go, so we've got hold of the controller. And as you can see there, there's all sorts of things here, which is great. And I think, there we go, open, and so on. Anyway, so what we'll do now is we'll create a function called handle link press, and we'll paste in the definition of our anonymous function there. So we've now got a function called handle link press that refers to this controller that we've just sort of grabbed here in a variable. Fine, let's leave that there. Now it's time to define our new table, a slightly sort of improved visual representation of the different destinations. Let's call it empty for mobile table, or main table if I'm being modern. We'll say new sap.m.table, and we'll define some of the properties and aggregations. Well, just the aggregation for now. Columns aggregation inline columns, and we'll have I don't know, 3 columns. The name column, we'll have the proxy column, and we'll have the URL column as well. We're not interested in anything else, so we'll say we'll just use a little sort of array, and then map over these elements in the array: name, proxy, and URL. And for each of these column names, we'll call a function to return. I'll do this as neatly and nicely indented as possible, so it's still easier to read. Return, for each of these, we'll actually return a column. New sap.m.column. There we go, and a column has a header aggregation, and the header aggregation will use a text control for this. New sap.m.text, and the text control has a text property which will set to the column name. That'll do. Let's get rid of that for neatness. There we go. And notice the slight delay there, because I think it's just and only just loaded, a table from SAP M. Cool. Because it wasn't used before. Let's go back to the console. All right, so now we've got our new table definition. What we'll do now is replace this table with that new table. So we can, well, let's go a different way around. We can say view equals controller. We've got the controller get view. We can go from the controller to the view, and then we'll say view dot remove. Well, actually, what's in the content? Get content. We've got 2 things. The first thing is this table that we're talking about, so that's the one we want to get rid of. What is the second one? The second one is probably this destination configuration thing here. Destination details wrapper, I'm going to guess that's that thing there. Okay, we only want to remove the first one, so we'll say view.remove content, and we can provide an index of 0. There we go, so we've actually removed the table from up here. Now what we want to do, of course, is to insert our new table in its place. So we say view.insert content, and of course it'll go at the start if we don't specify an index, empty. Ah, nice. We've got an empty, for now, table in its place. Great stuff. So now we've got this table, we can put some data in it, or have some data appear in it, by binding the table's main aggregation, which is the items aggregation, to the same place that the old table was bound to, which is the destinations, /destinations. If you remember from here, we had the /destinations. So what we'll say is mt dot, we'll go a long way around, bind aggregation. Let's specify the aggregation, items, and we'll specify the path in the model that we want to bind it to, destinations, and the template that we have to specify for this binding, we'll use a classic template for a table control, which is a column list item. New sap.m.column, there we go, column list item. There we go. Now, inside the column list item itself has a cells aggregation, which is like the individual cells in a row, so one cell per column. So we'll set up the cells aggregation, which is going to be sort of a literal aggregation of 3 cells, one for the name column, one for the proxy column, and one for the, where is it? It's over here somewhere, for the URL column. There we go. We'll say new sap.m. Well, the name we'll have as the link, and the text of the link is pretty obvious. That's going to be the same as before, the same as the data before, which is inside the well, actually, it's here. This is, if we look at this, let me just get rid of that for a second. Let's go back up in the history and have a look at the slave detail. So as you can see, oh, that's not that useful. If we just say destinations 0.slave, that'll do. There we go. So we can get all the things we need for each of the rows in this table from here. So we'll get the name from slave. Oh, where is it? Slave name. There we go. We'll get the URL from HTTP URL, and we'll get the proxy type. The proxy from proxy type, which is on-premise versus internet or whatever. So that's what we want to do. Let's just bring back that thing that we were typing in. There we go. Text, so we'll bind it to slave relative to the actual destinations entity set, as it were. Slave name. And of course we want the press handler. So there's a press event on a link in the sap.m library, and that press, the handler to be executed when the press event is fired, is our handle link press, isn't it? There we go. And if we also then add a couple more controls for the other 2 columns, we'll have text controls for each one. New sap.m.text. I'll just put it on one line for now. And the text property of that text control is going to be bound to slave. What did we say? This is the proxy column. So we'll set it to HTTP proxy type, and oops. Oh, there we go. We got the. I forgot to put the URL in. There we go. Oh, we'll do that later. Okay, so in fact, well, we'll do that right now. Mt dot, let's see if we can do that right now. Get cells. Oh no, we want add. Sorry, not what we want to do. We want to get the template for the aggregation binding. Template equals mt.get binding items. In fact, binding info items. Yeah, that's okay. Dot template. Sorry, template. There we go. So template dot add cell new sap.m.text. Text is bound to, what did we say? The slave, the HTTP URL, this thing up here, for the 3rd cell that I forgot. There we go, and we'll stick that in there. And we'll have to rebind that, because obviously it's, well, not obviously, but I suspect it's not going to be there. So if we say mt.unbind, that's just shorthand, unbind items, and mt.bind items destinations template, hopefully now, yeah, there's the URL. Now the fact that it's right over there, the columns are sort of nicely but awkwardly evenly spaced, what I'm going to do, by the way, these are all the same URL only because I sort of duplicated this one to this one and this one just for test purposes, so it's not as if we've got the wrong data, it's just these are the same. If we say mt.set fixed layout false, then we get a little bit better. This proxy column is a little bit better. Okay, anyway, we're not going to mess about with how it looks too much. I'm more interested in the fact that it's taking up less vertical space. Actually, while we're at it, let's add another column that binds to, where is it? One of these pairs. What I want to know as a developer is whether or which ones of these are sort of Web IDE relevant or not. And if I choose this one, you'll see that this one is Web IDE relevant because it's got this Web IDE enabled true. So what I'm going to have is a column to tell me whether the destination has this Web IDE enabled true or not. So what we'll do is we'll define a little function that will tell us, given a pair, whether that pair of key and value is Web IDE enabled and true. So let's say has Web IDE enabled property is a function that takes a map of a pair of things and returns mpair.key is Web IDE enabled. Let's scroll that down a bit. Web IDE enabled, and the value is, and this is a string true, not a Boolean true, is true, which is that string there. Okay, we've got a little function, a little helper function, and now we can say template. Oh, actually, we'll add the column first, won't we? We'll add the column. Add column, and that column, just like the other ones, has a header, and the text is going to be with the text property of Web IDE relevant or not, so that sort of thing. Okay, so we've got that there, and we've got that there yet. There it is, Web IDE. Nothing in it yet, but if we now get the template, which I think we've still got here, yes we have, we can add yet another cell to that template. Template, here's the history, there we go, template.add cell, there we go, add cell. Now, we're not going to add a text property anymore, we're going to add an icon property, SAP UI core.icon. And that icon property has, that icon control has a source property, which is the URL of the icon. This URL can be one of those SAP icon URLs. But of course, we're going to want to have this dynamic. So what we'll say is we'll use the complex binding syntax with sort of the path specification is going to be to slave pairs. So we're going to bind this source property to actually a map, an array of maps of values. So this thing gets passed to a formatter function, which we can define here. It's going to take an array of the pairs, which is coming from this thing here, and then it's going to say, it's going to use that little function we've defined, apairs.filter has Web IDE enabled property, So that will either return a list of 1 or a list of 0 length, depending on whether it's got that property or not. And basically, if it's a non-zero length, then we want to, let's put this on a separate line, just for readability purposes. SAP icon, we'll have a little tick, which is an accept. Otherwise, we'll return nothing for the icon URL. And there's the formatter. That's the end of the formatter. This is why, there we go, yeah, I love brackets in JavaScript. Yes, okay, that looks good. Fine. So let's try that. So we've added that extra cell to the template, and we'll have to do that little unbind bind jig again. Unbind, bind. Ooh, of null. Oh, what's going on here? Slave pairs. What have I done? Of course. What a fool. What a fool. I'm going to say template. What I've done is I've forgotten to check whether we've got any pairs or not, because of course we're not going to have values in A pairs every time this formatter is called. Bad practice, TJ. Template. So how do we remove this? Template.get cells. We've got those there. So template.remove cell 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3, the fourth one. There we go. And then we'll add it again. There we go. You can see it's that icon that we removed. Let's just clear screen so we can see what we're doing. There we go. So we want to say if A pairs, then do that. So let's just indent that so we know what we're doing. That's more like it. Let's try that instead. So we'll unbind. We've already unbind anyway, and bind to the new template. And now we have the name, the proxy, the URL, and yes, a little tick for that one, which is Web IDE. So now we can click on these as well, and we can see that the individual links are working. And we have our smaller table, which is taking up less real estate. And we've got a bonus of some more useful columns for us as developers. Anyway, that is a very, very rapid version of the session that I gave. The conclusion at the end of the session that I said during the SAP Inside Track Sheffield was that UI5 is awesome, and it is. So, thanks for watching.